In the early game, the bow has always been my go-to weapon for stealth openers. But as soon as I pick up any gun whatsoever, I immediately drop the bow and forget about archery forever. But I got curious one day. I asked myself, is archery any good in 7 days to die? Can I be an effective zombie killer using just a bow or crossbow? I wanted to give the bow an honest try, and to truly test the bow's viability, the difficulty needed to be put on Insane Nightmare. For 1 week, I set out to survive the game on its worst settings. From beginning to end, I must only inflict damage with archery adjacent weapons. This means no melee weapons, no explosives or molotovs, no spiked traps, and absolutely no guns. This would also be a permadeath playthrough, so dying was also not allowed. Many start on the path of the ranger, but few ever reach it. I started the game as I always have, completely naked and apparently owing a lot of money to some random duke. I began punching the grass because that's a perfectly normal thing to do in the apocalypse. I gathered plenty of wood and started making a bunch of building blocks. You can probably guess what I plan to do with those. About 30 seconds into the game, I started having second thoughts. The thought of using the primitive bow in any capacity had put me well outside of my comfort zone. The tutorial granted me 4 entire perk points, and I immediately put them into agility and archery. I was going to need all the damage in the world for my level 1 primitive bow. I also farmed up as much wood, stones, and feathers as I possibly could, because I was obviously going to need a lot of arrows. If I were to run out of arrows in the middle of a fight in an archery-only playthrough, I would probably die horribly. My day one plan was to gank as much loot as possible, because I absolutely hate doing the intro buried supplies quest. I would rather skate on glass shards than dig for an afternoon. I set my sights on this perfectly average house. It was the ideal target for breaking and entering. And no, I was not confident enough to take on even a single zombie without building a miniature tower. The owner of the house was displeased with my trespassing, and I began firing several arrows into her face. My first altercation had already cost me 5 entire arrows. I needed to do some sneaking. It's very convenient when the zombies don't wake up after disintegrating a door. This nurse zombie was killed to death with only 2 arrows. I was feeling pretty good after that, and I even scored some glue. Perhaps I would survive this challenge after all. I only got a few pieces of cloth, sewing kits, and glue from this house, but I will never complain about getting glue, so I counted that one as a victory. I waged war with several tree stumps before getting my first honey, and I gradually made my way to the trader, looting every stone and bird's nest along the way. This chicken expertly evaded my arrows while standing perfectly still. This was going to be a long week. I am absolutely trash with bows. They are definitely my least used weapon in this game. I began wondering why a medical camp would have so many dead bodies. The zombie chasing me down probably had something to do with it. Mo, please. Come on, Mo. Mo had stupidly caught himself in the gate. I assisted him by shooting several more arrows into his face. The loot stash in this camp was perfectly easy for me to access. All I needed to do was bash the door down. I brutally failed the sneak check, and Big Mama was extremely displeased with me. She was absolutely not having any of my nerd-pulling shenanigans, and I fled the fight. It was simply not worth the trouble for Tier 1 loot, and also I was too bad at the game to take on a Big Mama. I decided to test my aim on another Mo's face. Even on Insane Nightmare, Mo is absolutely incompetent at being an apex predator. It didn't matter if I was total trash at using the bow. So long as I could outrun Mo, I was probably going to win. Ooh, yes, a decapitation. That's what I want to see. The key to my success was definitely going to depend on my ability to explode zombie heads with a stone arrow. Joe is also a dumb, slow zombie who is only slightly more threatening than Mo. It's time to steal Trader Rex's shit. I went ahead and took the Buried Supplies quest because I did want to unlock questing eventually. He had 3 archery books, which was pretty lucky. I hate the idea of giving Rex any amount of money, but I was going to need those books. I decided to abuse trader protection and killed Steve to death through the gates. With absolutely no bonus experience, I redeemed all my challenges. Now, it was time to carve out a nice living space for myself. Level up straight into agility. I loved that this zombie's head was perfectly out of view. And I better get used to zombies crawling through one block spaces because that's apparently going to be a thing in 2.0. These crawlers are a lot tankier than they deserve to be. Surely the problem isn't that I'm completely bad at getting headshots. No, that's definitely not the case. Nightmare speed, by the way. This was where I remembered you could hit Bird's Nest for extra feathers. Destroying Bird's Nest also adds insult to injury after stealing the unborn babies. I was at 9 glue now, which was going to serve me extremely well for crafting exploding arrows. And while I was very much looking forward to using exploding arrows, I wasn't living under any delusions. Exploding arrows are a real bastard to craft. It's made much worse since I would need a crucible to craft the steel arrowheads. And yes, I do know that archery is actually very good towards the later part of the game when exploding arrows can be crafted in bulk. Hello, Arlene. It's time to get shot in the head. Okay, time for the scary part. There is a bastard fat tourist in here, and I'm concerned he's just going to eat all of my arrows. I also appreciate this party girl perfectly hiding her head. Let's see how long it takes them to bash a hole in this door. Oh, yeah, that's gonna take a while. Let's just, help them. I'm bringing out the Legos. One could only hope to be as good at dodging as some of these zombies are. The hitboxes are slightly questionable for these arrows, but I'll let it slide for right now. There's no way I could miss this tourist's fat head. No glitching through the door, please. Probably should have waited for the tourist to break the block before killing him. But now, I was in the treasure room, and the treasure was mine. The food pile had food, the poppin' pills crate had pills, and the loot crate had loot in it. It was the kind of loot one would expect from a Tier 1 POI. That's why I like to raid a little bit before I spend half an afternoon digging for absolutely no reward, because these are good sources of first aid bandages, and I was legally required to carry several bandages on Insane Nightmare. Suddenly, my eyes had spotted the most incredible POI in the universe. And no, I'm not talking about the Book Barn. The Book Barn is mediocre at best. The Dead Rooster is a reprehensible POI, but science has shown that chickens do in fact have feathers, and this POI had the mother lode. These two zombies slightly dodged their heads, causing me to miss a few shots. My failure to meet the sneak check caused several more zombies to materialize in front of me. I fled to my coward's nest and engaged in several conflicts. But Arlene can apparently do her own nerd pulling. And now I forgot which Arlene had the lowest HP. It was time for me to stab some chickens for several feathers. The two crawlers were hot on my trail, but I strategically ignored them. It's treasure time. I slightly died on the inside when I looted these Molotov cocktails, because of course the one time I ever loot Molotovs is the one time I do a bow-only playthrough. These zombies were slightly annoying me, so I made my way home. My nighttime plans were to sit inside of my new base and cower in fear. I had absolutely no confidence whatsoever in my ability to take on a feral. According to my calculations, it would take me approximately 50,000 arrows to kill a single feral. But I was nearly dead from boredom, and I began bashing away at this fiery barrel for entertainment. Nighttime was the perfect time for me to knock out that buried supplies quest. I engaged in psychological warfare with the zombies by throwing rocks at them, and I committed to spending several precious minutes into slowly digging into the ground. Of course, just as I was getting deep, I hear the low gurgling noises of a nearby zombie. And it was a feral, because why wouldn't it be a feral? I do feel a small sense of shame anytime I place 2 blocks for me to stand on during combat, but this was a feral Arlene, so I did what I needed to do for my survival. Arlene had decided to knock down my weaker supporting block. She then proceeded to punch her fist straight through my head, which caused me to bleed several liters of blood. After slightly chipping away at her health for many seconds, she finally went down. And that is why I hate buried supplies in all of its degenerate forms. I grabbed the degenerate food stash and stood on top of my degenerate nerd pole. I thanked this Arlene for not being a feral and then proceeded to kill her. The Jacobs residence was another easy place to gank loot. Mr. Jacobs wasn't looking too healthy, but he gifted me a perk point, and I held on to it for the time being. I was torn between unlocking parkour or continuing with agility. I would wait a little longer before making my decision. Rect opened his doors, and I could utilize exactly zero of these rewards. Thanks again, Rect. I took a clear quest for the book barn, the perfect POI for abusing the double looting mechanic. The book barn does get a little nasty in some places, so I did a small amount of building. It's time to run away. Oh, somehow I didn't aggro the other zombie. Fists. I've never wanted fists in my life. Might as well be a sledgehammer book. Speaking of sledgehammers, I'm very interested to see what the sledgehammer book set is going to offer in 2.0. Oof, shooting this zombie in the soft spot made me hurt in real life. I don't mean to be cruel like that. And of course I aggro the party girl right as I'm moving slightly forward. Okay, nobody jump on each other's heads, please. Ouch. It's falling back time. Why can't these zombies let me steal their books without trying to kill me to death? I felt a slight amount of pressure dealing with 3 insane nightmare zombies all at once. The bastards kept moving their heads slightly, causing me to utterly miss some of my shots. If only I could make some sort of explosive arrow. Oh, she's doing a thing. It's time to move. The bow-only playthrough was going swell. It's only fitting that I get my face slapped on top of a nerd pole. The tourist apparently had some business with the bookstore as well. I looted every book and found exactly 0 archery crafting books. In fact, I believe my crafting skill went into the negatives after that book run. I finished off the zombies guarding the treasure, and ran across the best possible archery book, the one that lets me craft those exploding arrows. Now I just need several handfuls of gunpowder, polymers, and steel arrowheads. I altered the fabric of reality by hitting the quest marker and repeated my shenanigans. I landed 2 consecutive head puffs. The extra damage from a quality 2 bow was apparently all I needed to assert my dominance. Somehow, I managed to pull only 2 zombies this time. It was much cleaner this time around, but I am surprised how bad a book barn POI can go. I unlocked quality 3 bows, and I was now legally forced to craft my new bow. Now bows are starting to feel good. I was landing more head pops. I was starting to get into the swing of this playthrough. And apparently structured brace mods can go on bows. I don't think I've ever used this mod on a bow in my whole life. I was tempted to take the chopped wood piles from Rect, but I wanted to try and rush the wooden bow, so I took the crafting scale magazine bundle. And of course I got every single book except Bow Hunters, because Rect is never useful. I then gave Rect all of my money for a cooking pot and a magazine. Then I proceeded to mash all of my perk points into parkour. Parkour is a very special perk in this game. I think the fun pimps should know that parkour doesn't need any sort of rebalancing whatsoever. It's perfect just the way it is. While I wasn't entirely sold on bows just yet, I did find the frequent head pops to be very satisfying. I added fire to several murky waters because I was tired of being thirsty all the time. Predictably, my next clear quest was going to be at the Dead Rooster. That was always going to be an instant yes for me. I failed the stupid check, and the game threw exactly 2 zombies at me. I continued failing this stupid check by shooting entirely too many arrows at this zombie's hand. Bo had evidently required my assistance. I jostled him free by shooting an arrow directly into his face. Purses are excellent sources of lockpicks and sometimes canned food. I can't wait to see what's inside. I hate this game. I hate this game so much, but I don't need a stupid pistol when I can just instantly decapitate a zombie with a stone arrow. I began to feel paranoia when this crawler zombie headed directly towards my dead chicken. Also, I'm not sure what I did differently this time, but the zombies didn't immediately swarm me when I stuck my head in this basement. I abused building blocks and closed doors, and claimed my treasure. Except I had aggravated this girthy bastard, and he insisted I work for the loot instead of trying to cheese my way through the game. I finished off the singular dog that was just hanging out in the backyard. And I snagged a nice learning elixir from a liquor pile. Definitely have to remember to keep looting these liquor piles. They're low-key really nice. I immediately picked the crafting bundle, bought a bow hunters from Ret, became slightly more agile, and got the desired magazines for the first time in my life ever. And then I crafted a very pretty quality 5 primitive bow. I started to notice that archery, for all of its flaws, actually moves along fairly nicely in progression, compared to the other weapons at least. Or maybe I was just lucky. It probably helps that I wasn't diluting my loot tables with melee weapons, or guns. I returned to the dead medical camp, the one that had all those dead bodies in it. I made Mo extremely mad by slightly poking my head inside of the premises, and... Mo, please. Mo is truly the dumbest zombie. No medical camp could possibly help a person that gets stuck behind an open gate. This nurse invited me to explode her head with a stone arrow. I found Mo once again and... Mo, please. Please stop, Mo. Now, I did slightly glance Mo with a stone axe, but I did exactly 1 damage to him and didn't care enough to restart the run. This doctor zombie attempted to juke me, but I outwitted her by closing a door. I knew I would have to face a big mama zombie at the end, but I was more prepared than last time. I was now slightly more confident than I was on day 1. I initiated conflict by slightly moving forward. Parkour made me feel like a Superman, and I used this closed gate to easily defeat the zombie menace. I claimed the treasure and was rewarded with some gunpowder. The 500 wood was nice, of course, but I could farm wood much more easily than gunpowder. And just to point this out, gunpowder is used for creating exploding arrows, which are arrows that explode on impact. Crafting exploding arrows was going to be a real bastard, however. The steel arrowheads were a serious limiting factor, especially in the early game. The game is cruel and unusual like that. After buying Rex's final bow crafting book, I only needed 2 more magazines to craft the wooden bow. Getting bows to 9 was staggering progress, considering I was still on day 2. Now it was time to raid the Powell residence. I played Leapfrog, and I proceeded to leapfrog this arrow straight into the zombie's face. I'm sure I won't regret scrapping these iron bolts at any point in this playthrough. And no, I was not going to play with that wandering horde. The loot bags have absolutely nothing for me. And for whatever reason, I couldn't get the screamer to spawn in the construction site POI. But I wasn't complaining or anything. After putting a 3rd point into bows, I proceeded to harvest entirely too much cloth. Now that I was 5 agility and 3 into bows, I felt like I was truly putting bows to the test. The increased speed of drawing and reloading had become very noticeable, but I still wasn't at the point of this playthrough where I felt I could take on a zombie without nerd pulling. Not having a melee weapon felt very strange, and I would continue to accidentally press my melee keybind for most of the playthrough. The forge was now crafting, which granted me the right to craft iron arrowheads. I got an excellent roll on today's quest, with lots of fetches and only 1 degenerate buried supplies quest, which I was never ever going to do. But first, I needed to stab Tommy with several arrows. This fence insulted me by being unrealistically paper thin. In what universe would a fence be paper thin like this? Hello, bird. Yes, please fly directly into my arrow, please. Easiest 30 feathers of my life. I relied less and less on nerd pulling and more on closed doors. Progress was truly being made, and then I applied complicated math and physics to locate the satchel. Timing was good, so I went ahead and ganked the loot. I had acquired yet another crafting skill magazine. I was conveniently 2 magazines away from a wooden bow, and it just so happens, nope, didn't get it. I hate this game. And then I made an earth-shattering discovery. I never knew you could just buy a generator and electric fence post from the traders on day 3. I never thought to even look before this. That was something to think about. I fast traveled to the cook's residence. One weird thing about the cook's residence is, even though it's called the cook's residence, I never see any kitchenware. What could they be cooking, I wonder? Yoink, and back to the trader. Wrecked made the decision to not be totally useless, and he gave me a crafting skill bundle that adequately rewarded me. I snuck a point into sneaking and ran off to make the legendary wooden bow. And when I say legendary, I mean a quality 1 bow. But to me, it was legendary because entering a new tier of weaponry on day 3 is always legendary. Not only was it dirt cheap to make, but it only took 3 seconds to craft. I think I'm starting to like bows. I tested my new legendary bow by missing several shots on an idle zombie. But now, I was here at the trailer park. It's time to put the bow to its actual test. Now I was feeling good. I felt like I could actually kill the zombies with a reasonable amount of effort. But the week was still young. I needed to endure several more combat situations as well as a horde night. But it was a refreshing feeling using a bow instead of the usual melee gun combo. Another crafting skill bundle gave me the armor magazines needed to unlock the special armors. But that was completely meaningless because I didn't have the workbench to make the new armors. But that was okay. What I really needed was a small amount of polymer from this porta potty. Oh, hello. Yes, I'll take that. Absolutely, I will. And I'm not even sure how I missed that shot. Hitboxes, please. But at least I wasn't completely cowering in fear of the zombies. Except for this biker. I was absolutely afraid of bikers. I was on a quest to get gas from this gas station. Unfortunately, the gas station contained a few belligerent actors. This zombie thug completely rejected the concept of being crippled. The video game had clearly been displeased with my cheese tactics. It began throwing those tactics right back at my face. And then he T-posed on me just 'cause he could. After claiming a small amount of treasure, I had the honor of slowly chipping away at these immortal crawlers. I usually use spike traps for these crawlers, but, well, you know. While being massively over-encumbered, I thought it would be a great idea to poke my head inside Grumpy's pub and loot the cement mixer. The cement mixer is firmly inside the POI, at the exact spot where 13 zombies were alerted to my intrusion. I trotted for dear life, wearing down my knees and back from all the weight. A dozen zombies were beating away at the fence, but I had gotten to safety just in time. It was worth the risk because that was the final forge ahead needed to unlock the workbench. Unlimited would please Mr. Eck, thank you for being barely useful. And that was all the quests I had for today. I returned to base and gathered some goodies to sell back to Eck. Trader Reset Day was tomorrow, and this was my final chance to acquire electricity extremely early. I did it. It's done. Electric fence posts are absolutely balanced and not cheesy when it comes to horde nights. I'll go ahead and address this. While I didn't explicitly ban electric fence posts, they absolutely went against the spirit of the playthrough. And actually, they are explicitly banned because science has shown that electricity can inflict damage. So I ended up not using them. I wasted all that gold for absolutely nothing. I wasn't thinking about it at the time. Oh, hello, zombie. I'd like your permission to explode your head real fast, please and thank you. Tommy challenged me to a duel, and I'll go ahead and spoil it. I'm still bad at using bows. I barely won the duel. I also challenged this biker to a duel, and this would give me insight on how well a bow could stand up to a biker. Bikers are a little tanky, but it wasn't completely terrible. It was a biker after all, that's just how it goes. I now had the wrench unlocked, and I celebrated by shutting this zombie thug up. The loot was now looted, nighttime had arrived, and I spent the night illegally entering other people's property and just being a general menace to zombie society. I did find yet another pistol because the game has a love-hate relationship with me. And when I say love-hate relationship, I mean to say it's a hate-hate relationship. I finished the night off by digging dirt and ran straight into wrecked as soon as morning came. Day 4 was going to be a big day. The fetch and the clear quests were going to be the last I needed to finish tier 1. The clear was very conveniently located at the Shade Tree Auto. I tried to go as long as I could without nerd pulling, but I shamelessly used a hatch because I was expecting another biker. There was no biker this time, so I did all that shameful cheesing for absolutely no reason at all. More first aid and new tool magazines unlocked quality 4 stone tools. I had a nice stockpile of first aid bandages, and this was when I realized I've been getting hit a lot less with bows than with melee. My theory is that using a ranged weapon allows me to avoid hits due to being outside the melee range. The Powell residence was next. This was a fetch, and oh hey, bicycle handlebars. This was the POI with the weird burned zombies in it. It was time to jump directly towards the loot. I unlocked the loot room by shooting Marlene directly at her head. Quality 3 wooden bow was unlocked along with the new bow part. Since wooden bows need bow parts to craft, I held off on crafting any higher quality bows until Horde Night. I didn't know at the time where my bow skill was going to end up, but my plan was to definitely not use a quality 1 wooden bow for Horde Night. I was hoping for at least a quality 4 or higher. Another magazine bundle in the bags. And there it is, the bicycle. Also, I've gotten like 8 bundles this playthrough just doing tier 1. That's absurdly lucky. Trader Jen was to the northwest and only 1 kilometer away. That wasn't far at all. My plan was to get some tier 2 quests done in the burnt forest. Surely nothing bad could come from a biome with an inflated game stage multiplier. But if I was going to risk the burnt forest, I needed to make a workbench. That way I could make some fancy new armor. And when I say fancy new armor, I definitely mean preacher gloves. After using a wrench to do some wrenching, I gained my 10th level and became slightly more agile. I made the decision to peek inside the airdrop during the shocking 7-minute waiting period to craft a workbench. Nothing crazy was inside, of course. It's day 4 in the forest biome. I wouldn't be getting legendary auto shotguns inside of it or anything like that. Airdrops were honestly completely unnecessary, since my luck was staggering for this playthrough. Oh no, this gym is located in the middle of absolutely nowhere. The quests are going to be annoyingly far away. I took some cobblestone for a change because I was well above the legal limit for bundles this playthrough. McCormick residence? Sure, why not? I'm sure I won't die horribly in there. Oh, she had electric fence posts as well. What is this video game? Also, there was no way I was going to turn down 19 glue. My workbench finished, and it was time to craft some good old preacher gloves. I went ahead and made some athletic shoes and the assassin outfit for some extra sneakiness. Hunger had struck me right as I was riding to my quest, because of course it did. I blamed my hunger on this thug zombie and proceeded to find absolutely nothing in the workbench. For my very first tier 2 quest as an archer, I opened with a very satisfying head pop. This zombie thought a helmet was going to save him from a decapitation. Turns out, it absolutely did protect his head. Apparently, his hard hat made him completely blind to the danger he was in. This pig was making me nervous. Sometimes it's hard for me to know if pigs will turn hostile or not. This very helpful can of food failed to help me by feeding me this pathetic can of tuna. None of the cabinets had canned food either, because why would a kitchen have food? Archery was really starting to grow on me. I felt like a secret agent. Zombies were apparently heavy sleepers. This Night Stalker book gave me 10% extra sneak damage during nighttime, something I didn't need at all, but I will absolutely take it. This workbench had a bicycle chassis. I already had a bicycle, but this was the first time I've ever found both bicycle parts in a single playthrough. Jen gifted me my 15th magazine bundle, and just as I feared, the quests were super far away. I'm sure Dr. Jen will find a medical use for this bicycle chassis, and going forward, I would be doing my Tier 2 questing in the forest biome. And yes, even though I was hungry, I wanted to save my meat stew for healing purposes. Somehow, there were still chickens in the dead rooster, and I created another dead rooster for harvesting purposes. It was now day 5. Horde night was fast approaching, and I began the planning process. My plan was to wait until the very last minute to come up with a real plan. Rekt was spiteful and gave me absolutely no clear quests, but this fetch quest did lead me to a brand new town. My old town was pretty much explored except for the scary tier 3s. Ooh, never encumbered at night. That will come in great handy. I don't know how I'm already at 11 in Handyman. I absolutely do not have points into Advanced Engineering. The game challenged me by placing the satchel exactly behind this door. And since the loot was literally right in front of me, I felt that I had earned the loot. This crawler zombie unleashed a sneak attack straight into my spine. Karma had repaid me for all of my sneaking shenanigans. I felt a deep sense of shame for allowing a crawler zombie to get a hit on me. Then I became slightly more agile. If only it were that easy in real life. Since Rekt was a completely useless quest giver, I opted to explore the new town. And when I say explore the new town, I definitely mean gank all of the easy loot. The water purifier mod completely removed any sense of challenge regarding hydration. The great thing about fat tourists is they are not bikers. They are slow and can easily be defeated by slightly running away. I continued my education in bowcrafting, and I was shocked to learn that I was literally one magazine away from unlocking the crossbow, and it wasn't even terribly expensive to make. I desperately needed to go to church for my sins, but I immediately aggroed all of the zombies in the final loot room. The zombies were simply no match for these broken down cars, but Darlene became very difficult by slightly moving forward. The church had the kind of loot one might expect from a church. Now, I was feeling confident enough to fight the zombies on the ground, and was even rewarded a loot bag for my courage. This restaurant is a complete cluster of a POI, especially for a tier 1, but all I needed to do was finesse my way to the loot room, and I immediately aggroed all 13 zombies in the POI. I'm leaving forever. Please don't hit me in the mouth. Graveyards are widely known for having treasure in them. Since this was the apocalypse, nobody was alive to judge me for my actions. I did what I could do to make sure I inflicted 100% damage from my bow, but Mo was too stupid not to run directly into the spike traps. And no, I'm not going to lock myself inside a cage with a biker. I may be stupid, but I'm not an idiot. And Mo never had a clue. Rekt gave me my 100th crafting skill bundle, and I was on my way to Sir Bartholomew's salvage shop. I maliciously abused the crafting mechanic in this zombie crafting game. Then I killed this other zombie under completely fair circumstances. I allocated my perk point into the 4th level of Archery. Even though there would be no way for me to max out the Archery perk in a 7-day long playthrough, I had already unlocked a majority of Archery's potential. I was fully immersed in the Ranger lifestyle, but I would become even more immersed after unlocking the Iron Crossbow. I still needed some parts, and this gun-themed store was conveniently located right here in my hometown. The Shotgun Messiahs are very decent places to find weapon parts. I maliciously used the sneak mechanic to take out all threats, except I failed the sneak check in the very first room. Pipe bombs are exceedingly useful for any playthrough, but this was an archery-only playthrough. pipe bombs would only give me depression and anxiety. But I did score a small amount of steel arrowheads from one of the shells, and poor Mo failed to receive any sort of clue once again, and I never would have expected to find a bow part inside of this shotgun-themed crate. But that was all I needed. Rect was just useful enough to carry 3 bow parts in his inventory, the final 3 pieces I needed to make the iron crossbow. I returned home and started baking some exploding arrows. Day 6 was fast approaching. I was legally obligated to die on day 7 in the game called 7 Days to Die, but I have no intention of ever dying. I also needed to travel to the desert. I've never known a single human being that has ever wanted to hunt vultures, but my needs were particularly special. Vultures were basically flying chickens, and these flying chickens had a bulk amount of feathers. It must be said that this map is hands down the worst map I've ever played on. The desert had this obnoxious natural border, which spanned for several hundred meters, not ideal biking conditions. I needed to trick the birds into attacking me, so I allowed the zombie to get a singular hit on me. The plan worked, but I did not plan on being incompetent with the bow and arrow. This was going to be a long journey. And no, I will not be taking on a feral businessman on the ground. Those guys are entirely too fast on Insane Nightmare. This was what I was talking about earlier. This landscape was absolutely hostile to any kind of bicycle-related travel. But I finally found an entrance to the desert that wasn't completely psychotic, and I even landed a few kills along the way. Now I was in the land of flying dead chickens. The potentials for feathers was unlimited here. But I had to earn my feathers, which sometimes required me to sacrifice several points to my health. After having my eyes gouged out several times, I needed a band-aid. I was in a pretty strange spot in the playthrough. Archery was going great, but I was close to my time limit. There wasn't really anything I needed here in the desert besides feathers. I normally do the crack-a-book shuffle, but there wasn't really anything I needed to unlock crafting-wise. I proceeded to explode the leg off of this zombie's body, but apparently being crippled is only a suggestion in this zombie survival video game. I decided to poke my head inside of this strip club for absolutely no reason at all. I couldn't tell you why an adult male would want to visit a strip club. My intentions were pure. I purely wanted to steal all of the loot inside of this loot crate. My criminal activity had gotten me slapped, but that was the risk I took. And of course the game just gives me a drum magazine, thanks for absolutely nothing. It was almost daytime and I made my way back home. I couldn't think of a better time to be thirsty and over-encumbered on Insane Nightmare while navigating a hostile landscape. But everything turned out okay. And on my way home, I discovered another trader wrecked. It's always exciting to see new trader compounds. Except this was another one of those absolutely nowhere trader compounds, and sadly, the quests were really far away. I returned home and used dark magic to queue up an iron crossbow in the workbench. I accepted Grumpy's Pub, which is an absolutely terrifying POI for a tier 2. But all I needed to do was abuse the environment, and I would slowly clear the area, one zombie at a time. But seriously, look at all the red dots. This isn't even an infested quest. And if you see a sleepwalker, throw a rock to lure him out. I have no idea what this zombie is doing. I think he randomly went into destroy area mode. But even though the zombies are unbelievably stupid, I'm almost as stupid as they are, so I needed to be careful. This zombie bow was completely outplaying me. It's like he knows I'll die if I run out of arrows. But I used the fair and balanced parkour skill to my advantage and cleared everything out. And I even scored some extra steel arrowheads. That's more exploding arrows in the bank for me. Mo, please. The quest reward was absolutely degenerate. My next quest would take me to Ranger Station Echo. Military camps are always fun, and they never have anything horrible living in them. I retrieved my fancy new crossbow. Its damage wasn't that much higher than the wooden bow, if I'm being honest, but I would carry both of them on my tool belt so I could switch out ammo types. The crossbow is an excellent sniper rifle, and the bow is ideal for sneaking. And now it was time for me to raid this military base. I was instantaneously rewarded with a bandolier mod. And now I could craft flaming arrows and bolts, and spoilers, I make absolutely no use of it. I've never used flaming arrows before. I'm sure it has utility, but it sounds expensive and difficult to make. I was shocked to find military soldiers inside a military base camp, but these were perfect test subjects to test my new crossbow on. Iron bolts have armor penetration, and it really made a difference in this fight. The base camp even had an undead eagle living on top of it. Very patriotic. But I began exercising caution because the final room would get a little spooky. I consulted my memory, and my memory said there were guaranteed lumberjacks waiting for me. I was then immediately chased out by a lumberjack. His head was weirdly difficult for me to hit, and that's totally not because I'm bad or anything. But the lumberjack was only a very small warm-up. My soul immediately left my body when I heard the footsteps of a feral wight. Apparently, I had a bunch of bad karma stored up, and the video game decided to unleash it all at once by sending a goddamn feral wight at me. But now that I think about it, I was foolish to think the game wouldn't spawn a feral wight at a tier 2 in the forest biome. Because why wouldn't there be a feral wight at a tier 2 in the forest biome? It only makes perfect sense when you think about it. Yes, of course, a feral wight is a perfectly adequate challenge for day 6 on any playthrough. It's become something of a curse ever since I started uploading videos on YouTube. Feral wights have been haunting my early game playthroughs ever since. Not that it's a big deal, I'm perfectly fine using large amounts of ammo the day before Horde Night. The feral wight was eventually defeated, and he even dropped a loot bag. I unlocked quality 5 stone tools and raced my way back to Trader Rec. Not taking Molotovs was tough for me to do because they're insanely useful. Don't get me wrong, I was very much enjoying the archery only playthrough, but I was sorely missing pipe bombs and explosives. If only I had some sort of arrow that explodes on impact. But today was now tomorrow, which made today the big day. I spent the night risking my life for small amounts of dirt and rock, as well as some extra feathers. And no, I couldn't find those big rock things. I had to settle with these wildly inefficient boulders for mining stone. Actually, I did find a big rock thing, but it was only after mining several hundred stones. I decided to do weapons testing on this extremely violent biker zombie. My test subject refused to hold still. It's like he knew I was incompetent with my aim. But the biker had gone down after just a few shots to the head. Not bad. Not bad at all. Bikers do not go down easily at all. I was pretty impressed. And now it was preparation time, and I loaded my bags with enough drugs to kill a small stadium full of people. This massive Tier 3 fire station had reasonable accommodations for surviving an apocalyptic Blood Moon event. I immediately failed the sneak check and aggroed every zombie possible. I fled the scene. But I had an opportunity to pick the zombies apart one by one. Now I could fight them on my terms. I had reached a point where I could kill a zombie before they could even charge at me. And even the tourist went down pretty easily. More Molotov cocktails. That's just depressing to me. The first order of business was to destroy this steel staircase with a stone axe. Breaking 2 pieces took almost an in-game hour, and that's with 2 points in the Miner 69er. I completed the Survivor Short Challenge by surviving a short amount of time. But now I needed to complete my fighting position. The Blood Moon Horde was set to 64, and even though my game stage was relatively low, I was still expecting dogs and direwolves tonight, because that's just how the game is now. I built a tower with a ladder going up, the height matching the fire station. I intended to implement a design to maliciously troll the zombie horde by making the smallest possible walkway that's only just barely large enough for the zombies to walk on. Cobblestone block for added support. And I think this pole was technically acting as support. Honestly, I should have just done regular blocks for the support, but I was committed to the memes. And just a fair warning, I am not a habitual base builder at all. And now to work on the roof. This block was acting funny, so I was forced to chip away at several thousand hit points worth of material. And then I had to do it again because the building blocks were still acting weird. But as it turned out, all I needed to do was remove this strip that was in front of the building. It only had 250 hit points. Fantastic. But I was now on my way to finishing the walkway. But first, I needed to survive by not starving to death. And this walkway was exceedingly long. I probably could have cut it back by like 10 blocks. I rushed to Trader Rex's compound with the intention of buying some concrete. Except Trader Rex had absolutely no concrete. He adamantly refuses to be remotely useful. Today was also airdrop day. I took a peek inside and it gave me a legendary compound crossbow bundle. And by that, I mean to say I got absolutely nothing. I wanted to see about making a claw hammer, so I returned to base. Unfortunately, I was exactly one forged iron short on making one, and honestly, I just needed to get back to upgrading my base. Time was getting short. I added more poles on top of my walkway. This would force the zombies to jump over them, and since zombies are almost as stupid as I am, this will make it extremely difficult for them to get to me. I immediately fell for my own trap and decided to brutally sprain my leg. This was destiny. As I was finishing up, I nearly started making spike traps, but I ended up stopping. Spike traps are excellent for catching birds, but spike traps were explicitly banned from the archery-only playthrough. I was a good boy. I don't have it in my heart to break the rules, because I am not a rat. But I've been lying all along. I was a rat the whole time. Yes, that's right. Here I was, shamelessly setting up electric fence posts. Archery only challenge? I think not. I wasn't going to die tonight. I was going to set up my cheesy electric fence post, which would allow me to live through unlimited horde nights. Except I didn't have an engine, so I couldn't power my electronics anyway, and I had put up my wrench as well. Oh, that was awkward. Believe it or not, I actually wasn't thinking about electric fence posts going against the rules at the time. I'm just so used to using traps, it's not really something I've had to think about before. But the horde bells were ringing. It was time for me to die horribly. The zombies were attacking, and when I say attacking, I mean they all started fumbling over each other. The meme was working. The zombies had absolutely no team spirit. Instead of working together, they were simply bumping each other off the extremely thin walkway. I probably could have made the walkway 10 blocks shorter because this was just brain dead. I decided to burn the rest of my stone ammo before dipping into my iron ammo. The crossbow was slower to reload, but it was harder hitting. I do think it is worth keeping both a bow and crossbow on the tool belt. Time to make everybody die with exploding arrows. Oh, that's satisfying. That's exactly what I wanted to see. We're playing a new game. It's called Everyone Dies. Sadly, due to my extremely limited supply, I switched back to using iron arrows. I needed to save my special arrows for a special occasion. And now I was on the dog wave, just as I suspected. I kept my ears open for a direwolf since I was expecting one tonight. But since I was surviving and thriving on horde nights, I'd like to give my thoughts on my archery-only playthrough since we're almost finished here. First, I genuinely enjoyed giving bows a fair chance. Obviously, I know bows are very good for the endgame when exploding arrows can be crafted in bulk, and I know bows are good for sneak attacking in the early game, but I wanted the full ranger experience this time. I wanted bows to be my main go-to weapon. For me, the start was agonizingly slow. A quality level 1 bow leaves something to be desired, but putting perks into archery did help tremendously. Trying to kill zombies that are only slightly moving was an absolute bastard for me, but that is a user problem and not a bow problem. The hitboxes can be a little funny, but that is very much a common problem in the game. The bow did have its satisfying moments. For example, I had just what the doctor ordered when these dogs got nice and clustered up for me. That's the kind of thing I can get behind. But it didn't take long at all for me to start feeling good with the bow. The damage felt very adequate when I had a quality 5 primitive bow, along with some more agility and archery perk points. I thought bows would be pure torture going into this, especially on Insane Nightmare, but bows are absolutely a viable method for zombie slaying. It was a lot of fun. However, I'm still unsure where I would fit archery into future non-restricted playthroughs. As a ranged weapon, it just doesn't stand up to guns, especially when those guns have drum magazines and full auto mods. Exploding arrows are incredibly fun, but they are a bastard to farm in bulk. But perhaps it's not meant to be a competitive ranged weapon. What if, instead of starting off in melee, someone started off in archery instead? It's very easy to get archery started compared to guns. The ammo is dirt cheap. The damage output is about the same as the melee weapons when you account for drawing and reloading. Plus, there's the added benefits from stealth. But there you have it. I was able to survive against insane nightmare zombies using only archery weapons. It was so fun, I may turn this into a full-on playthrough. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. I appreciate the support, and I will see you guys on the next one. Take care.